the workers who built the pyramids. Hey guys, tonight you're about to become one of the people history almost forgot. Not a pharaoh, not a priest, not an architect whose name survived 4,000 years. No, you're the person carrying the rocks. Congratulations. While Hollywood has spent decades convincing everyone that thousands of miserable slaves were whipped into building the Great Pyramid, archaeology has quietly been standing in the corner clearing its throat. Turns out, that's probably not what happened. Instead, you're about to spend the day with skilled laborers. The farmers, stone cutters, bakers, doctors, engineers, rope makers, cooks, beer brewers, and surprisingly well-fed workers who actually built one of humanity's greatest achievements. And trust me, it still wasn't exactly a relaxing office job. Your workplace weighs over 6 million tons. Your commute is across scorching limestone. Your health insurance consists of honey, linen bandages, and hoping the village physician thinks your crushed foot is worth saving. Still, compared to some modern Monday mornings, at least nobody schedules a Zoom meeting. So before we begin, make sure you gently tap that like button if you enjoy falling asleep to history. Subscribe if you haven't already. And tell me down below, what's the hottest temperature you've ever experienced? Because by the end of tonight, you'll have a whole new appreciation for air conditioning. Now, dim the lights, maybe crack open a window if it's warm where you are. Get comfortable beneath your blanket. Take a slow breath and imagine the modern world quietly fades away. No engines, no electricity, no glowing phone charging beside your bed. No buzzing notifications demanding your attention every 7 seconds. Only silence. Well, almost silence, because somewhere ahead someone is shouting at an ox. Your eyes open long before sunrise. Not because you wanted to, because everyone else already has. The room is still dark. The air is surprisingly cool. Mud brick walls surround you, their surfaces rough beneath your fingertips. A woven reed mat presses against your back. The faint smell of smoke lingers from last night's cooking fire. Someone nearby coughs. A baby cries for only a moment before its mother gently hushes it. Outside, sand crunches beneath bare feet. Goats complain loudly about existing. Some things apparently never change. You stretch, every muscle protests. Your shoulders ache from yesterday. Your lower back feels like someone replaced your spine with stacked bricks, which, considering your profession, feels oddly appropriate. You sit up slowly. The linen tunic hanging nearby isn't exactly fashionable. Imagine wrapping yourself in a bed sheet, then charging someone luxury prices for it. Welcome to ancient clothing. You pull it over your head. It's light, comfortable enough. Already dusty. Everything here is dusty. Your hair, your skin, your sandals, your breakfast, the inside of your nose. Even the wind seems dusty somehow. If deserts had a favorite seasoning, it would be more desert. Outside your home, dawn paints the eastern sky in soft shades of deep purple and orange. Palm trees sway gently near irrigation canals fed by the mighty Nile. Birds dart across the water. For just a few precious minutes, ancient Egypt feels peaceful. Then somebody starts yelling. Work begins early, very early. Because by midday, the sun becomes something between an inconvenience and a personal enemy. You live in a settlement built specifically for pyramid workers. Modern archaeologists call places like this workers' villages. They've uncovered houses, bakeries, dormitories, workshops, medical facilities, even surprisingly organized streets. This wasn't some chaotic slave camp. It was a functioning community. Families lived here. Children played here. People argued about neighbors here. Someone probably borrowed a tool and never returned it. Civilization truly never changes. The village wakes together. Smoke rises from communal ovens. Women grind grain into flour using heavy stone querns. Children carry jars of water almost as big as themselves. Donkeys wander around looking deeply confused. An old dog sleeps through absolutely everything. Honestly, life's goals. You nod at neighbors. Everyone knows everyone. The stone hauler, the baker, the rope maker, the carpenter, the physician whose patients mostly arrive missing skin. The man whose only job seems to involve yelling directions louder than anyone else. Every civilization has one. Let's pause for a second, because this is where one of history's biggest myths sneaks in. For centuries, people imagined endless lines of chained slaves building the pyramids under constant whippings. Mostly because later writers and, much later, movies loved dramatic stories. Reality is both less cinematic and somehow more impressive. Excavations near Giza have uncovered workers' cemeteries remarkably close to the pyramids themselves. Think about that. Ordinary workers, buried beside kings. That's extraordinary. Skeletons reveal broken bones that healed, meaning injured workers often receive treatment. People who are considered disposable usually don't receive months of medical care. Researchers have also uncovered evidence of diets rich in bread, fish, vegetables, and astonishing amounts of beef and sheep. Enough meat to feed thousands. Hardly starvation rations. Most historians now believe the workforce consisted largely of paid laborers, skilled craftsmen, and seasonal workers, many of them farmers who came during the Nile's annual flood, when their own fields were underwater and agricultural work temporarily paused. Instead of sitting idle, they worked on the king's monument, earned food, earned status, supported their families. It was demanding, it was dangerous, it was exhausting. But it wasn't the simplistic story Hollywood loved telling. History, as usual, is far more interesting. Now, enough history. You're hungry. Breakfast arrives. Don't get too excited. There are no pancakes, no bacon, no triple-shot caramel latte. Instead, someone hands you a thick loaf of coarse bread, dense enough that you briefly consider using it as construction material. Beside it sits a jug of beer. Yes, beer. At sunrise. Before work. Sounds like questionable life choices. Until you remember, Egyptian beer was nothing like modern beer. It was thick, cloudy, low in alcohol, packed with nutrients, closer to liquid bread than something you'd order during happy hour. It also happened to be much safer than untreated water, so everyone drank it, children included, different times. You tear off a piece of bread, it's chewy, nutty, a little gritty. Stone-ground flour often contained tiny fragments from grinding stones, meaning ancient Egyptians slowly wore down their teeth simply by eating. Imagine your breakfast coming with complimentary sandpaper. The beer washes it down, sour, earthy, surprisingly filling. Not delicious, but neither is working 12 hours while hungry. Nearby, workers laugh, someone tells a joke, another complains about sore shoulders. One man dramatically insists his back is permanently broken. Everyone ignores him, mostly because he said exactly the same thing yesterday and the day before. Some traditions truly are timeless. The horizon begins to glow. Golden sunlight spills across the desert. And then, you finally see it. The pyramid, even unfinished. It dominates everything. The limestone catches the first rays of dawn. The structure rises impossibly high above the plateau. Thousands upon thousands of stone blocks already stacked with astonishing precision. From here, it almost looks like a mountain. Except mountains aren't built one stone at a time by human hands. For a moment, the chatter stops. Even workers who've seen it every day still glance upward, because no matter how tired you are, no matter how sore your muscles feel, standing beneath something so enormous reminds you you're helping create something that may outlive everyone you've ever known. And somehow, that thought makes today's work feel just a little lighter. Unfortunately, the stones themselves will not. Now that you've survived breakfast and discovered that ancient beer is basically fermented oatmeal, it's time to head to work. In the next chapter, you'll join hundreds of workers hauling multi-ton limestone blocks beneath the blazing Egyptian sun. Discover how engineers moved stones that should have been impossible to transport, and learn why teamwork, not magic or aliens, made the pyramids possible. So, settle in. The hardest part of your day hasn't even started. The village disappears behind you. Ahead, the desert is waking. The sun has barely cleared the horizon, but already the air feels warmer. Not hot yet, but warm in the way an oven feels when you've just turned it on. Ancient Egypt is politely letting you know what's coming. Enjoy this part. You'll miss it in about 2 hours. Around you, hundreds of workers stream toward the Giza Plateau. Some carry wooden mallets slung over their shoulders. Others balance coils of rope thicker than your arm. Teams of carpenters haul fresh timber. Potters push carts loaded with water jars. Scribes walk carefully with rolls of papyrus tucked beneath one arm, looking exactly like the sort of people who remind everyone about deadlines. If you've ever shown up to a construction site just before sunrise, multiply it by several thousand, then remove every machine. No cranes, no bulldozers, no forklifts, no diesel engines. Just people. An unbelievable number of people. And one impossible dream. As you climb the gentle slope toward the pyramid, the sounds grow louder. Tap, 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 stone against stone, wood striking wood. Men calling measurements, oxen grunting, ropes creaking under impossible tension, the rhythmic scraping of sledges across wet ground. It's strangely musical, not beautiful exactly, but organized, purposeful. Each sound belongs somewhere. Each person has a role. The pyramid isn't one giant construction project. It's hundreds of smaller ones happening all at once. Stonecutters shape blocks. Surveyors check alignment. Carpenters repair sledges. Rope makers replace frayed cords before they snap. Water carriers weave through the crowd. Cooks prepare meals for thousands. Doctors treat injuries before they become deadly. Even musicians occasionally appear, beating drums or clapping rhythms to help workers pull together. Imagine trying to coordinate the construction of a skyscraper without radios, without blueprints printed on giant sheets, without emails titled "Quick Question." Honestly, ancient Egypt may have been better off without those. You find your team waiting beside a massive limestone block. And when I say massive, I mean it. This stone weighs roughly 2.5 tons, about the same as a modern SUV. Only this one doesn't have wheels, or air conditioning, or cup holders. Your foreman stands nearby, He's lean, sun-darkened. His linen kilt is cleaner than everyone else's, which tells you he spends more time organizing than lifting. Lucky him. He scans the crew, counts heads, nods, no motivational speech, no inspirational quote about teamwork making the dream work, just one sentence. Lift when I say. Efficient. You like him already? Well, as much as anyone likes the person about to assign them several hours of back-breaking labor. Now here's something fascinating. People often imagine workers rolling giant stones on logs. It makes sense. You've probably seen it in cartoons. Maybe even documentaries from decades ago. There's just one tiny problem. Ancient Egyptians didn't leave convincing evidence that they regularly rolled pyramid stones on wooden logs. Instead, they used sledges. Picture a giant wooden sled, no wheels, just runners sliding across the ground. But wait, you might ask, wouldn't that create enormous friction? Excellent question. It absolutely would. Unless someone had a clever idea. Modern experiments and even an ancient Egyptian tomb painting show workers pouring water onto the sand ahead of the sledge. Not to make things muddy, quite the opposite. A carefully dampened layer of sand becomes firmer. It reduces friction, meaning fewer people are needed to pull the load. 4,000 years ago. Someone figured out the engineering equivalent of lubricating a giant wooden shoe. Human ingenuity is wonderfully weird. Your hands grip the thick rope. It's rough. The fibers bite into your palms. You wrap it once around your wrist, not too tightly. You've seen what happens when ropes snap. No, thank you. The foreman raises one arm. Everyone leans forward. Your sandals dig into the packed earth. Muscles tense. The entire crew holds its breath. Then, pull! The rope tightens instantly. Nothing happens for one embarrassing second. It feels like you're trying to drag the moon. Then, a deep groan. Wood scraping stone. The sledge shifts. Just a little. But it moves. The entire crew cheers. Not because the job is done, because getting something this heavy moving is the hardest part. Momentum becomes your best friend. You lean harder, your legs burn, your shoulders scream. Sweat begins rolling down your forehead despite the early hour. The block slides forward another few inches, then another, soon. It's moving steadily. Not fast. Maybe walking speed, but steady. Every step matters. Every worker matches the rhythm. Left, right, pull, breathe. Left, right, pull, breathe. It's almost hypnotic if your muscles weren't actively negotiating their resignation. Ahead of the sledge walks another worker carrying a large clay jar. Every few steps, he pours water onto the sand, just enough. Not too much, too little, and friction increases. Too much, and the sand becomes sloppy. Imagine being the person responsible for getting the moisture exactly right, while hundreds of people depend on your judgment. No pressure. Actually, lots of pressure, about 2.5 tons of it. By mid-morning, the sun has fully claimed the sky. Its warmth transforms into heat, then into relentless heat, then into something that feels deeply personal. There is no shade, none. The pyramid itself casts long shadows early in the day, but your route isn't lucky enough to enjoy them. The limestone beneath your feet reflects sunlight upward. The sky presses it downward. You're roasting from both directions. The air shimmers. Sweat soaks your linen tunic until it clings to your skin. Dust sticks to your arms, to your face, to your neck. Soon you're wearing what can only be described as nature's least luxurious body scrub. You understand why Egyptian workers shaved much of their body hair. It's cooler, cleaner, and frankly, less itchy. While you struggle with the ropes, you notice something else. People everywhere are doing completely different jobs. A team of masons carefully smooths finished blocks with copper chisels and stone pounders. Nearby, surveyors stretch measuring cords with astonishing precision. One tiny mistake at the base could become a massive problem hundreds of feet higher. Elsewhere, carpenters repair sledges worn smooth from countless journeys. Blacksmiths, or rather copper workers, sharpen tools dulled by relentless stone. Bakers deliver fresh bread. Water carriers refill jars. Doctors stitch cuts. Administrators count supplies. Someone even keeps track of attendance. Imagine calling in sick. "I'm afraid I can't drag limestone today." The foreman raises one eyebrow. "Understandable. See you tomorrow." Hopefully, every so often, you overhear visitors whispering, "How did they do this? Surely it must have been aliens, giants, magic, secret lost technology." The workers laugh, not because they've heard those theories, because they know the answer. Planning, organization, mathematics, experience. Thousands of skilled hands working together over decades. Sometimes, the simplest explanation is also the most incredible. Human beings are astonishing when they cooperate. Messy, argumentative, occasionally stubborn, but astonishing. At last, the foreman raises his hand. Rest. The word spreads almost instantly. Workers collapse onto nearby stones. Someone passes around water. Another shares onions. A few men joke that onions make them stronger. Whether that's scientifically accurate is debatable, but they certainly believed it. Garlic, too. Ancient Egyptian workers loved garlic enough that later writers claimed laborers protested when garlic rations were reduced. Imagine history remembering your strike, because someone cut the garlic budget. Honestly, that's a cause many of us could support. You sit heavily on a limestone block. Your breathing slows. A breeze drifts across the plateau. It's warm, dry, but welcome. You glance back toward the Nile. Green fields stretch along its banks like ribbons of life cutting through endless desert. Without that river, none of this exists. No villages, no bread, no workers, no pyramids. Everything begins with the Nile, and everything you're building today depends on it. You've survived your first haul. Your hands are blistered. Your shoulders ache. Your respect for ancient engineering has increased dramatically. And the day is only half over. You've barely caught your breath before the foreman points toward the eastern quarry. No dramatic speech, no sympathy, just a nod that says, "Time to make more rocks disappear." You wipe the sweat from your forehead. It immediately returns. The Egyptian sun has accepted your challenge. And it's winning. The quarry lies just beyond the growing pyramid, a vast wound carved into the limestone plateau. From a distance, it almost looks like someone has taken a gigantic bite out of the earth, only instead of teeth. They used thousands of determined human beings. As you approach, the noise grows louder. Clang, crack, thunk. Voices echo off the stone walls. Dust drifts through beams of golden sunlight, like tiny ghosts dancing in the air. Everywhere you look, men are working. Some swing heavy dolerite, pounding stones again and again against solid limestone. Others crouch with copper chisels, patiently shaping edges. Surveyors kneel beside measuring cords. arguing over fractions of an inch that won't matter to anyone alive today. Except they absolutely do, because one tiny mistake here becomes a massive headache 50 meters higher. Ancient Egyptians understood something every contractor eventually learns. Measure twice. Move 2.5 tons once. If you've ever imagined ancient Egypt as peaceful, forget that image. At least here. The quarry is loud. Really loud. Copper striking stone creates sharp metallic rings. Dolerite hammers produce deep booming thuds. Workers shout warnings. Foremen call instructions. Someone laughs after telling an extremely questionable joke. Another team bursts into song while lifting tools, not because they're auditioning for a musical, because rhythm helps people work together. 4,500 years before someone invented Bluetooth speakers. Construction crews already knew music boosted morale. Although, admittedly, their playlist consisted mostly of enthusiastic chanting and whoever happened to have the loudest voice. Now here's something that surprises a lot of people. Copper is relatively soft, too soft to simply carve enormous limestone blocks all day. So how did they do it? Enter dolerite. It isn't a superhero, although, honestly, it deserves its own comic book. Dolerite is an incredibly hard volcanic rock. Egyptians collected rounded dolerite boulders and used them like giant hammers. Imagine holding a bowling ball. Now imagine smashing it against limestone. For 8 hours, congratulations, you've discovered ancient CrossFit. The pounding stones slowly fractured the limestone surface. Over time, the workers carved long trenches around each block. Patiently, methodically, no explosions, no power saws, just persistence. It's one of history's greatest examples of human beings solving an enormous problem with equal parts intelligence and stubbornness. Mostly stubbornness. Your job today isn't glamorous. You're helping free another block from the quarry floor. At first glance, it doesn't even look like a block, just part of the bedrock. One continuous sheet of pale limestone stretching beneath your feet. But the master quarrymen already see it differently. They've marked neat lines using red ochre pigment, every angle calculated, every measurement checked. One older craftsman crouches beside the markings. His face is deeply lined from decades under the sun. He runs his fingertips across the surface almost lovingly, like a sculptor greeting unfinished artwork. You watch him for a moment. He notices, smiles, then taps the stone. Listen. You blink. Listen. To a rock. He strikes it gently. Tock, tock, tock. The sound changes slightly near one corner. Different. Hollow. He nods. There. No fancy instruments. No laser scanners. Just experience. Thousands upon thousands of stones have trained his ears better than any machine. It's easy to underestimate ancient craftsmen until they outperform your expectations using nothing but practice. It's knowledge. A young worker nearby swings his pounding stone too hard. The blow lands slightly off target. A chunk breaks away from the corner. Silence. Everyone stops. The foreman walks over. He doesn't yell. That's almost worse. He simply points at the damaged edge. The young man sighs. That block will now require extra shaping, extra labor, extra time. A mistake that lasted 1 second will cost hours. Construction isn't just about strength. It's about precision. The Great Pyramid isn't remarkable because its stones are big. It's remarkable because so many of them fit together astonishingly well. Even today, some joints are so tight you can barely slide a blade between them. Not magic, not aliens. Just generations of accumulated skill. Sorry, extraterrestrials. You'll have to take credit for crop circles instead. By late morning, the quarry feels like the inside of a giant flour bag, except instead of flour, it's powdered limestone. Every swing sends tiny white particles into the air. They coat your eyelashes, they stick inside your nose, they settle into your hair. You cough, then immediately regret opening your mouth. Congratulations, you've just tasted Egypt. It's chalky, very chalky. You wipe your face with your sleeve. Bad idea. Now you've simply spread the dust more evenly. You glance around. Everyone else looks exactly the same. White-faced, sweaty, covered in stone powder, like ghosts who've decided to start a construction company. Around midday, the work slows, not because anyone feels refreshed, because the heat has become absolutely relentless. The sun now hangs directly overhead. The limestone reflects light so brightly you almost have to squint continuously. Even breathing feels warmer. You retreat beneath a rough fabric awning stretched between wooden poles. Shade, glorious shade. It's astonishing how grateful you become for something as simple as standing out of direct sunlight. Lunch is simple. Bread again, more beer, some dried fish, a handful of dates, an onion, maybe a little cheese if supplies have been generous. No gourmet presentation, no tiny parsley garnish, no influencer taking photographs before anyone eats, just calories. Because your body is burning through them faster than a modern smartphone burns battery while running 5 apps. Nearby, someone jokes that if the pharaoh truly loved his workers, he'd invent clouds. A ripple of laughter spreads through the group. Even the foreman smiles. Briefly, then remembers he's in charge. While eating, you notice something interesting. The smartest people on the site aren't necessarily the strongest. They're the planners, the surveyors, the architects, the men carrying measuring rods instead of pounding stones. One surveyor carefully aligns a wooden sighting tool with distant markers. Another checks right angles using stretched cords. Simple tools, extraordinary accuracy. Ancient Egyptian geometry wasn't abstract mathematics. It solved real problems. How do you keep millions of stone blocks aligned? How do you build straight walls over enormous distances? How do you ensure each layer remains level? Questions that still challenge engineers today. Without mathematics, the pyramid becomes a pile of rocks. With mathematics on, it becomes forever. Of course, not every day ends well. Across the quarry, a shout. Work stops. A worker has slipped while guiding a partially freed stone. His ankle twists awkwardly beneath him. Several men rush over. No panic, they've done this before. The physician arrives carrying a leather satchel. He examines the injury carefully. The ankle isn't broken, just badly sprained. Relief washes across the group. The doctor wraps it tightly with linen soaked in resin and honey. Honey wasn't just food. It helped fight infection. Modern science confirms what ancient Egyptians discovered through experience. Sometimes, old medicine actually worked remarkably well. The injured man won't return to lifting today. Someone else quietly takes his place. The work continues, not because people don't care, because the pyramid cannot stop for every setback. And everyone understands that someday they might be the one needing help. As the sun slowly begins its long descent westward, you step back from the quarry edge. Below you, hundreds of workers continue shaping stone. Above you, hundreds more haul finished blocks toward the growing monument. Beyond them, thousands of people cook, count supplies, weave ropes, sharpen tools, repair sledges, tend animals, bake bread, carry water, and care for the sick. Suddenly, the truth becomes obvious. No single person built the pyramids, no single genius, no lone hero, no mysterious visitors from another planet. It took an entire society, an ecosystem of knowledge, thousands of ordinary people, doing extraordinary things together. History often remembers kings, but monuments are built by workers. You've survived the quarry. Your muscles ache in places you didn't know existed. Your lungs are full of limestone dust. Your respect for ancient craftsmen has grown considerably, but the hardest engineering challenge still lies ahead, because in the next chapter, you'll climb onto the pyramid itself, where teams somehow raise multi-ton blocks higher and higher into the sky, using ramps, teamwork, balance, and remarkable ingenuity, all while standing hundreds of feet above the desert floor. And if you're afraid of heights, you may want to keep both feet firmly under the blanket. The lunch break is over, which is unfortunate, because your body had just started believing the workday might be finished. It wasn't, not even close. The foreman claps his hands once. That's all the encouragement you're getting. Your crew gathers around another limestone block. This one has already been dressed and squared in the quarry. Its corners are sharp, its surface is surprisingly smooth. If you run your hand across it, you can still feel tiny grooves left by careful chiseling. Someone spent days making this stone fit perfectly. Now your job is to make sure it reaches the pyramid without undoing all that hard work. No pressure, only 2.5 tons. As you approach the pyramid, something catches your eye. It isn't the monument itself, it's what surrounds it. A massive earthen ramp snakes upward toward the unfinished levels. Hollywood often skips this part, because let's be honest, ramps aren't as glamorous as glowing alien spaceships. But if you want to understand how the pyramids were built, you have to appreciate the humble ramp. Exactly what shape the ramps took is still debated by archaeologists. Some believe they were long, straight ramps extending out from one side. Others suggest zigzagging ramps that climb the pyramid's edges. Still, others argue for a combination that changed as construction progressed. The evidence doesn't preserve every detail, but one thing is almost certain. The stones didn't float, they didn't levitate, and they definitely weren't delivered by extraterrestrial moving companies. They went up, the hard way. Your team lines up behind the sledge, the rope tightens, the foreman looks uphill, then back at you. Steady. That's never a comforting word. Pull. Immediately you feel the difference. Dragging a stone across level ground was difficult. Dragging it uphill feels like trying to convince gravity to take the afternoon off. Your calves tighten. Your thighs begin burning almost instantly. Every step sinks slightly into the packed earth of the ramp. The workers beside you lean so far forward they almost seem ready to fall on their faces. Everyone breathes together. Pull, step, pull, step. The rhythm keeps panic away. Because if you stop thinking about the whole journey and only focus on the next step, somehow the impossible becomes manageable. Funny enough, that strategy still works today, whether you're climbing a pyramid or trying to answer 200 unread emails. You glance backward. Another crew braces long wooden beams against the rear of the sledge. They're not pulling, they're stopping it from sliding backward. It's a terrifying responsibility. If the rope snapped, or someone lost control, the stone could thunder downhill like an angry limestone avalanche. Nobody wants to be remembered as the man flattened by tomorrow's building material. The workers behind the block press with everything they have. Faces strained, feet digging into the earth, every muscle trembling. Construction isn't only about moving things forward. Sometimes, the real challenge is preventing disaster. The higher you climb, the wider the world becomes. You pause briefly while another team crosses ahead. The view steals your breath. Not literally. The climb already handled that. To the east, the Nile glitters beneath the afternoon sun. Its branches spread across the floodplain like shimmering ribbons. Green fields stretch toward the horizon. Farmers guide oxen through rich black soil left behind by the annual floods. Palm groves sway gently. Fishing boats drift lazily along the river. Children splash near the banks. Life everywhere. Then you turn west. Nothing. Only endless desert, golden, silent, unforgiving. It's an extraordinary contrast. A narrow strip of life surrounded by an ocean of sand. Without the Nile, Egypt doesn't exist. Without Egypt, no pyramids. Sometimes history depends entirely on one river deciding where to flow. You've reached one of the higher construction levels. The wind feels stronger here. It carries fine grains of sand that sting your cheeks. You look down, immediately regret it. People below have become tiny. The workers hauling stones now resemble ants. The village is reduced to neat rows of mud brick houses. Smoke curls gently upward from bakeries preparing the evening meal. For the first time all day, the pyramid feels less like a building and more like a mountain. Except mountains aren't measured with cubits. They don't require accountants. And they rarely need someone to remember where the rope inventory went. The block finally reaches its destination. Now comes the part that amazes future engineers. Placement. Several master masons kneel beside the prepared surface. One checks alignment using a stretched linen cord. Another brushes away every loose grain of sand. Even a small pebble could throw the block slightly out of position. Wooden levers slide beneath the stone. Workers push, others pull. The block shifts. Slowly, a fraction of an inch. Again. Tiny corrections, patient adjustments, no rushing. You expected dramatic construction. Instead, the final moments resemble someone carefully fitting together the world's largest puzzle. Then, a quiet tap from the master mason. Perfect. The block settles into place. Everyone exhales. It fits so closely against its neighbors that the seam is barely visible. 4,500 years later. People will still marvel at workmanship happening right before your eyes. A small group approaches. Everyone instinctively steps aside. At their center walks one of the senior overseers. Perhaps even someone working directly under the royal architect. His linen robes are spotless. His hands are smooth. Clearly, he spends less time lifting stones than giving instructions. Lucky fellow. But as he pauses to inspect the newly placed block, you notice something. He isn't arrogant. He's focused. His eyes scan every surface, every angle, every measurement. He quietly asks a surveyor for figures. The answer comes immediately. Satisfied, he nods once, then continues onward. Leadership here isn't just shouting louder. It's making sure today's work still makes sense 20 years from now. Here's something easy to forget. The Great Pyramid wasn't built in a weekend, or even a year. Most historians estimate construction took roughly 20 to 30 years. Think about that. Some workers began their careers here and retired before the pyramid was finished. Children born during the first foundation work. could have been adults helping place the final casing stones. Imagine joining a project today, knowing your grandchildren might attend its completion ceremony. Talk about long-term planning. And yet, generation after generation stayed committed, because they believed they were building something worthy of eternity, whether for religious devotion, royal loyalty, community pride, or simply because this was their livelihood. They kept coming back every morning. One stone, one layer, one day at a time. The pyramid surrounding you doesn't yet resemble the weathered monument people recognize today. Much of its outer casing is still being installed. Fresh Tura limestone arrives brilliant white, smooth, almost dazzling beneath the sun. When newly completed, the Great Pyramid likely shone like an enormous beacon. Imagine sunlight striking polished limestone across more than 13 acres of surface. Travelers approaching Memphis would have seen it glowing from miles away, not dull brown, not rough, radiant, a mountain of light. It's one of history's greatest visual spectacles. Now largely lost to time, the day's pace finally slows. Not because the work is finished, because the sun is beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon. The heat softens. The shadows lengthen. You sit carefully on a completed course of limestone. Below, the construction site continues humming. Above, the sky fades toward gold and amber. For just a moment, no one speaks. Thousands of workers, one enormous monument, one shared silence. You place your dusty hand on the warm limestone beside you. It still holds the day's heat, long after you're gone, long after your name has vanished. This stone may still be here, not because kings were immortal, but because ordinary people left extraordinary work behind. That realization somehow feels heavier than the block you helped haul. The sun is setting, but your day isn't quite over. In the next chapter, we'll leave the pyramid behind and return to the workers' village, where fresh bread comes out of communal ovens. Beer flows more freely than water. Doctors treat battered laborers. Families reunite. And archaeology reveals what everyday life was really like for the people who built one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Because history isn't only found in monuments. Sometimes it's waiting around the dinner table. The foreman finally lifts his hand. That's it. No trumpet, no applause, no dramatic movie soundtrack telling you you've earned your rest. Just one quiet gesture. Work is over. At least. Until tomorrow morning. You don't cheer. You don't have enough energy. Instead, you do something much more satisfying. You let go of the rope. Your hands immediately begin tingling. The rough fibers have left deep red grooves across your palms. Tiny blisters have formed where the skin finally surrendered. You flex your fingers. Every joint protests. Tomorrow they'll protest even louder. Congratulations, you're officially becoming a pyramid builder. The journey back feels slower. Not because it's farther. Because every muscle has decided to file a formal complaint. The desert, so bright and blinding just hours ago, now glows with soft golden light. The limestone cliffs blush orange. Long shadows stretch across the plateau. The pyramid towers behind you, silhouetted against the setting sun, even unfinished. It's magnificent. You stop for just a second. So does everyone else. Nobody says anything. There's an unspoken understanding among the workers. You spent the entire day cursing that enormous pile of stone. Now, from a distance, you can't help feeling proud. It's a strange relationship. like assembling furniture for 6 hours while questioning every life decision, only to admire it once it's finally standing. Except this furniture weighs 6 million tons. As the workers' village comes into view, their atmosphere changes immediately. The roar of construction fades. New sounds take over. Children laughing, dogs barking, goats arguing with absolutely everyone, the rhythmic grinding of grain, the crackling of cooking fires, someone singing while kneading dough, someone else trying and failing to tune a simple flute. Life, real life. This isn't merely a place where workers sleep. It's a thriving community. Archaeologists have uncovered remarkable evidence of this settlement near Giza. Rows of mud brick houses, large communal bakeries, fish processing areas, storage magazines filled with grain, workshops for carpenters, potters, and metalworkers, administrative buildings where scribes carefully recorded supplies, labor teams, and food distributions. It wasn't chaos. It was organized. Almost like a small city whose entire purpose was supporting one enormous construction project. Modern construction companies provide workers with cafeterias and supply depots. Ancient Egypt built an entire town. Before you even reach your house, you smell it, bread, freshly baked, if heaven has a scent. After 12 hours of hauling limestone, it's probably this. The communal bakery is alive with activity. Women shape dough into round loaves. Others feed bundles of dry reeds into blazing clay ovens. The heat rolling out of the bakery almost rivals the afternoon sun. Almost. Stacks of warm bread emerge one after another. Simple, dense, nutritious. Exactly what exhausted workers need. Bread wasn't just food, it was survival. The average worker probably consumed astonishing amounts every single day, enough to replace thousands of calories burned under the desert sun. You accept a warm loaf from the baker. She smiles. You look terrible. You nod. So do you. She laughs. Fair enough. Beside the bakery, the brewery is just as busy. Now, before anyone starts imagining an ancient Egyptian pub crawl, let's remember, this beer isn't modern beer. It's thick, cloudy, rich in grains, only mildly alcoholic, more like fermented porridge than something served in a sports bar. Still, after today's work, it tastes wonderful. A large ceramic jug passes from hand to hand. Workers drink, talk, laugh. Some collapse onto low mud brick benches with dramatic sighs worthy of professional actors. One man insists he'll never walk again. His friend reminds him he said exactly the same thing yesterday. Everyone laughs, including him. Shared suffering has a funny way of becoming shared comedy. As darkness settles over the village, families gather outside their homes. Dinner is modest. Bread, beer, onions, garlic, lentils, sometimes fish from the Nile, sometimes dates or figs, and occasionally, if supplies are generous, beef. This surprises many people. Animal bone evidence found near the workers' settlement shows that cattle, sheep, and goats were slaughtered in impressive numbers. These workers weren't living on scraps. The state had every reason to keep them healthy. After all, a hungry labor force builds very slowly. Think of it as ancient project management. Feed the people moving 2-ton rocks. It's amazing what good nutrition can accomplish. As the evening cools, conversation grows livelier. One older worker tells stories about his first season on the pyramid. According to him, everything was harder back then. The stones were heavier, the sun was hotter, the bread was smaller. You suspect at least 2 of those claims are exaggerated. Maybe all 3. Some things never change. Every generation believes they had it tougher. A younger apprentice proudly announces that today he finally helped place his first finished block. The older men clap him on the shoulder. They remember their own first day. Someone jokes that now he's officially allowed to complain about back pain. Welcome to adulthood, ancient edition, nearby. Children chase one another between houses. They pretend to pull imaginary sledges. Even their games imitate the world around them. One little boy climbs onto a pile of bricks and declares himself the pharaoh. Another immediately orders him to carry stones instead. The adults burst into laughter. Apparently, political satire is also timeless. Not far away, a small crowd gathers outside the physician's house. You're curious. So you wander over. Inside, the doctor works by the warm glow of an oil lamp. A worker sits quietly while his forearm is cleaned with water. The cut isn't deep, but it's dirty. The physician applies honey before wrapping the wound carefully in clean linen. Modern doctors still recognize honey's antibacterial properties. Ancient Egyptians discovered its usefulness through observation and experience. Nearby, another patient receives treatment for an injured knee. A third has splinters removed from his hands. Nothing glamorous, no magical potions, just practical medicine. Excavated skeletons from Giza revealed something remarkable. Many workers suffered broken bones that healed well. Some even survived severe injuries that would have required months of care. That tells us something important. These people weren't simply discarded when hurt. The community invested in keeping them alive. Healthy workers were valuable workers, but beyond that, they were neighbors, friends, family, while everyone else unwinds. A small building near the center of the village remains brightly lit. Inside, scribes continue writing. Reeds scratch softly across papyrus, inventory lists, food records, attendance, tool distribution, livestock counts. Everything is documented. One young scribe yawns, rubs his eyes, then keeps writing. Construction doesn't only happen with muscles. It happens with mathematics, accounting, organization. Someone has to know exactly how much grain arrived today, how many ropes need replacing, how many workers reported for duty, how many cattle remain. It's not glamorous, but without administration, the pyramid would grind to a halt. Even ancient megaprojects required paperwork. Some truths are simply eternal. Night finally settles across the plateau. The heat fades. The desert becomes almost cool. You step outside your house. Above you, the sky explodes with stars. No city lights, no airplanes, no satellites quietly crossing the darkness. Just thousands upon thousands of brilliant points stretching from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way spills overhead like pale smoke. It's breathtaking. Ancient Egyptians knew these stars intimately. Priests tracked their movements. Surveyors used them to align monuments. Farmers watched them to mark seasons. The heavens weren't decoration. They were a calendar, a compass, a clock. Some scholars believe the stars even played a role in orienting the Great Pyramid with astonishing precision toward true north. You look back toward the monument. Moonlight now paints its unfinished sides silver. Even at night, it dominates the landscape. Silent, patient, waiting for tomorrow. You return inside. The reed mat somehow feels softer tonight. Or perhaps you're simply too exhausted to notice. Your hands ache. Your shoulders throb. Your legs feel carved from limestone. Outside, the village gradually grows quieter. Conversations fade, dogs settle, cooking fires burn low. Only the occasional distant laugh drifts through the darkness. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, you'll wake before dawn, eat bread, drink beer, haul stone, laugh with friends, curse the heat, admire the pyramid, and do it all again, one ordinary day that's repeated thousands of times, by thousands of ordinary people, until the extraordinary stood complete. You've now seen something many history books skip. Not the king, not the treasure, not the glittering tomb, but the people who made greatness possible. And tomorrow, we'll discover the incredible engineering secrets hidden inside the Great Pyramid itself. How surveyors achieved astonishing accuracy, how architects planned one of history's greatest construction projects, and why modern engineers still study techniques developed over 4,500 years ago. Because the greatest mystery of the pyramids isn't who built them. It's how human determination, organization, and imagination came together to create something that still inspires the world today. Morning arrives again, not with an alarm clock, not with your phone vibrating because someone replied, "Sounds good," to an email chain with 17 people copied on it. Just the steady rhythm of life. The sky slowly turns from black to deep blue. The eastern horizon glows orange. And somewhere outside, someone is already making bread. Again. You briefly consider pretending to still be asleep. Unfortunately, ancient Egyptian foremen possess an almost supernatural ability to notice that sort of thing. So, once again, you tie your linen tunic, slide into your sandals, stretch muscles that strongly object, and step into another day beneath the shadow of history. Today, however, you aren't hauling stone, at least not yet. Instead, your foreman points toward a group of men gathered around long measuring cords stretched across the construction platform. Surveyors, engineers, architects. If yesterday belonged to muscles, today belongs to mathematics. And before your eyes glaze over, don't worry. This isn't the kind of math that gives you flashbacks to high school exams. This is the kind that determines whether a monument survives for 45 centuries. Tiny difference. The first thing that surprises you isn't what they're building. It's where they're building it. The foundation beneath the Great Pyramid isn't simply natural rock. The Egyptians carefully prepared it. Workers leveled huge sections of the limestone bedrock with astonishing precision. Modern engineers have measured parts of the foundation and found differences of only a few centimeters across enormous distances. Think about that. Imagine trying to level a football field without laser levels, without GPS, without electric surveying equipment. Just careful observation, simple tools, experience, and extraordinary patience. One careless bump in the foundation could become a disaster hundreds of feet higher. Gravity has never been known for forgiveness. A group of surveyors kneels nearby. One drives a wooden peg into the ground, another pulls a tightly woven linen rope until it sings with tension. These men have a respected title. Rope stretchers, which sounds less like elite engineers and more like a medieval rock band. But don't underestimate them. They are among the most important people on the entire project. Every measurement begins with them. Every angle, every straight line, every foundation, everything depends on accurate geometry. The lead surveyor squints toward another marker hundreds of feet away. He adjusts the rope slightly, barely an inch, then nods. Perfect. One apprentice records the measurement, another quietly asks a question. The older man answers patiently. Knowledge here isn't secret. It's taught, passed from one generation to the next. That's how civilizations grow, not by guarding knowledge, but by sharing it. Here's something almost unbelievable. The Great Pyramid is aligned astonishingly close to true north, not magnetic north. True north. Its orientation differs by only a tiny fraction of a degree, even today. Scholars debate exactly how Egyptian surveyors achieved such incredible accuracy. Many believe they observed stars circling the northern sky, night after night, season after season, watching carefully, measuring patiently, waiting until celestial bodies reached precise positions. Imagine spending years studying the stars, simply so future generations would look at your building and say, "Wow." Honestly, mission accomplished. You notice everyone speaking in units you've never heard before. Cubits, palms, digits, no centimeters, no inches. No tape measures bought from a hardware store. The royal cubit, roughly the length from elbow to fingertip, served as one of Egypt's standard measurements. Special measuring rods ensured consistency, because if one crew's cubit was slightly longer than another's, you'd eventually build something resembling modern flat-pack furniture, assembled without reading the instructions. Not ideal. One master builder carefully checks a limestone block using a polished wooden cubit rod. He smiles. The measurement is correct. The apprentice beside him smiles too, then immediately stops smiling, because there's another 100 stones waiting. Now here's a question. Where are the giant architectural drawings? The enormous blueprints covering tables, the computer models, the animated 3D simulations? Well, none of those exist, at least not in the modern sense. Planning relied on experience, scaled sketches, written instructions, geometry, and an astonishing amount of practical knowledge stored inside people's minds. Senior builders understood sequences. Teams knew routines. Craftsmen solved problems as they appeared. Think about how much knowledge disappears today if someone's laptop crashes. Ancient Egypt stored much of its expertise in living memory. That made experienced workers incredibly valuable. A master mason wasn't just skilled, he was a walking library. Nearby, you visit the tool workshop. Rows of copper chisels lie neatly arranged on wooden benches. Many already look worn, blunted, bent. Tiny cracks glint in the sunlight. Copper is wonderful for shaping limestone, but it dulls quickly, very quickly. A toolsmith places one chisel into a charcoal furnace. The metal glows deep orange. He removes it carefully, then hammers it rhythmically against a stone anvil. Clang, clang, clang. Each strike restores the edge. Around him, young apprentices pump bellows to keep the fire alive. Sweat runs down everyone's faces. Even the people making tools need tools to make more tools. It's labor all the way down. As the morning unfolds, you begin noticing something remarkable. No one seems unimportant. The baker feeds the stone haulers. The stone haulers supply the masons. The masons depend on the surveyors. Surveyors rely on rope makers. Rope makers need flax farmers. Farmers depend on the Nile. Doctors keep everyone healthy. Scribes keep everything organized. Even the donkey carrying water jars contributes. Without one small piece, the whole machine slows. It's easy to admire the pyramid itself. Harder, but perhaps more meaningful. To admire the society capable of building it. Great achievements rarely belong to one genius. They belong to thousands of people doing ordinary jobs extraordinarily well. At midday, you find yourself sitting beside one of the older surveyors. He's quiet, thoughtful. His hands are surprisingly clean compared to yours. Not soft, just less scarred. You ask him the question you've been wondering all morning. Will anyone remember us? He tears a piece of bread, chews thoughtfully, then smiles. They'll remember the pyramid. Not exactly the answer you hoped for. He notices your disappointment. They don't need to know our names. He gestures toward the monument rising above the plateau. They'll know we were here. You follow his gaze. The pyramid glows beneath the afternoon sun. Layer upon layer, stone upon stone. Proof enough. Sometimes leaving something meaningful behind matters more than leaving your name attached to it. It's a surprisingly comforting thought, especially in a world obsessed with signatures. As work resumes, you notice a boy carrying fresh water to the crews. He's maybe 12 years old, curious, always asking questions, watching everything. One day, he'll probably join the builders, and someday, he'll teach another apprentice. The pyramid isn't merely being built, knowledge is being built. Generation after generation, one lesson at a time, one careful measurement at a time, one perfectly placed stone at a time. The monument rising above the desert is only half the story. The other half exists inside the people creating it. Today you've discovered that the Great Pyramid wasn't simply an engineering miracle. It was an organizational miracle, a mathematical miracle, a human miracle. And tomorrow, we'll uncover the beliefs that motivated these workers to return day after day. Why building the king's eternal resting place was more than just a job. How religion shaped every aspect of Egyptian life, and why many workers genuinely believed they were helping maintain the order of the universe itself. Because sometimes, the strongest force moving a stone isn't muscle, it's belief. Another morning, another loaf of bread, another mug of thick beer that still refuses to taste like the kind advertised during the Super Bowl. You're beginning to accept it, not because it's delicious, because after several days of hauling limestone, you'd probably drink almost anything. You step outside your home. The pyramid dominates the horizon once again. Somehow, it already feels less like a construction site, and more like a permanent part of the landscape. It's strange how quickly human beings adapt. The impossible eventually becomes Tuesday. As you walk toward the plateau, a thought quietly follows you. Why? Why would an entire society spend decades building one enormous tomb? Couldn't all this effort have gone into more houses? More farms? More boats? It's a fair question. It's also a very modern one. Because you're looking at ancient Egypt through 21st century eyes. To understand their answer, you have to leave your own world behind for a little while. Imagine living in a place where the boundary between daily life and religion barely exists. Where every sunrise isn't just a sunrise. It's proof that the universe is still working. Where the flooding of the Nile isn't merely weather. It's a sacred promise that life will continue. For the Egyptians, the world depended on balance. They called this balance Ma'at. Not just truth, not just justice, but the proper order of everything. The seasons, the stars, the river, society, even the king himself. If that balance failed, chaos followed. Today we think of kings as political leaders. Ancient Egyptians expected far more. The pharaoh wasn't simply the wealthiest man in the country. He was believed to stand between humanity and the gods. His rituals helped maintain harmony throughout Egypt. His authority wasn't only political. It was cosmic. That's an enormous responsibility. Imagine your boss being expected to keep the sun rising every morning. Performance reviews would become significantly more stressful. When a pharaoh died, people didn't believe his role simply ended. His journey continued, and helping him complete that journey mattered. The pyramid wasn't merely a grave. It was part of an enormous spiritual machine. A bridge between worlds. The journey after death. As you work, an older laborer notices you staring toward the pyramid's upper levels. He smiles knowingly. Thinking about the king? You shrug. He nods toward the sky. The journey isn't finished. To ancient Egyptians, death wasn't the end. It was another beginning. The soul, actually several spiritual components, according to Egyptian belief, continued beyond earthly life. One aspect, called the Ka, required offerings. Another, the Ba, could move between worlds. Eventually, these aspects could be reunited, allowing the deceased to enjoy eternal existence. Complicated? A little. But every culture develops its own answers to life's biggest questions. Ours involved retirement plans and cloud storage. Theirs involved eternal life among the stars. It's easy to think of the pyramid as simply a stack of stone. But symbolism surrounded its design. Many scholars believe its shape echoed the sacred Ben stone, a mythical mound associated with creation and the first sunrise. Others point to the way its sloping sides seem to reach toward the heavens. Whether viewed as a symbolic ray of sunlight, a sacred mountain, or a monument to royal power, the pyramid carried meanings far beyond architecture. To you, it's heavy. To the Egyptians, it was also holy. Those two things can be true at the same time. Mid-morning, your crew begins another haul. The rope bites into your palms. Sweat trickles down your back. Dust coats your sandals. Nothing about the physical labor has become easier, but something feels different, Tree. As another worker strains beside you, he quietly whispers a short prayer. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for himself. Another touches a small amulet hanging beneath his tunic. Someone else murmurs the name of Ra, the sun god, as the morning light grows brighter. Faith isn't interrupting the work, it's woven into it. For many workers, hauling a stone wasn't simply earning today's ration. It was participating in something sacred. It's difficult to measure belief with archaeology. Bones survive, buildings survive, stone survives. Thoughts rarely do. But temples, inscriptions, and texts suggest religion shaped nearly every aspect of Egyptian life. Ignoring that would be like trying to understand the modern world without mentioning money or technology. Of course, ancient Egypt lasted for thousands of years. Beliefs changed. Rulers changed. Religious practices evolved. Different regions emphasized different gods. Some families favored one deity, others another. History is rarely as neat as a school textbook. People disagreed, adapted, argued, probably complained. Human beings have always been wonderfully consistent in that regard. One worker insists the goddess Hathor watches over builders. Another argues that Ptah, patron of craftsmen, deserves the credit. A third wisely decides not to enter the debate and keeps eating his bread. Possibly the smartest decision of the day. Near the pyramid, another construction site catches your attention. Temples, causeways, mortuary complexes. The Great Pyramid was never meant to stand alone. It belonged to a much larger sacred landscape. Priests would later perform rituals here. Offerings would be presented. festivals observed. The monument remained connected to the living long after the pharaoh's burial. Think of it less as a single building, and more as the center of an enormous ceremonial campus. Ancient Egypt didn't separate engineering from religion. They built both together. During a brief rest, you find yourself lying on your back. The limestone beneath you is still warm. Above, the sky stretches endlessly blue. A hawk circles overhead. Perhaps a reminder of Horus, the falcon god associated with kingship. Perhaps just a hungry bird looking for lunch. Sometimes symbolism depends entirely on who's doing the looking. You wonder whether anyone thousands of years from now will stand where you are. Will they know your name? No. Almost certainly not. Will they wonder how ordinary people manage to build something so extraordinary? Absolutely. And maybe, just maybe, they'll finally stop blaming aliens. As the afternoon wears on, something becomes clear. No one here wakes up believing they're building a random pile of rocks, whether motivated by wages, duty, religious devotion, community, or simple pride in skilled work. Everyone has a reason. Modern psychologists often talk about purpose, feeling that your work matters. Ancient pyramid builders understood that instinct long before anyone invented motivational seminars. When people believe they're contributing to something larger than themselves, they often accomplish remarkable things. Not effortlessly, not without complaints. You've heard plenty of complaints, but they keep showing up. Day after day, season after season, year after year. The day's final light washes across the pyramid. Its unfinished sides glow amber. Workers slowly descend the ramps. The noise begins to fade. You pause one last time before heading home. The monument stands silent. Massive, patient, still incomplete. You realize something. The pyramid isn't just changing the landscape, it's changing you. Your shoulders have grown stronger. Your hands rougher. Your understanding deeper. You arrived thinking history was about kings. Now you know history is also about bakers, doctors, surveyors, stone cutters, rope makers, and countless unnamed workers whose combined effort became one of humanity's greatest achievements. You've now discovered what gave these builders the strength to return every morning. Not only bread, not only beer, but belief. In the next chapter, we'll separate myth from reality once and for all. We'll investigate the famous legends of slave labor, secret chambers, lost technologies, curses, and alien builders, comparing them with what archaeology has actually uncovered beneath the sands of Giza. Because sometimes, the real story is even more astonishing than the legend. Before the sun rises, before another stone moves, before another loaf of bread disappears into someone's breakfast, let's talk about something almost as old as the pyramids themselves. Stories. Human beings love stories. We always have. If we don't know an answer, we invent one. Sometimes it's close to the truth. Sometimes, well, sometimes we decide space aliens deserve the credit. Poor aliens. According to the internet, they've apparently built everything from Stonehenge to your neighbor's suspiciously expensive backyard shed. Tonight, let's see what the evidence actually says. Myth number 1, the pyramids were built by slaves. This is probably the biggest misconception of them all. If you ask someone 100 years ago who built the Great Pyramid, many would confidently answer, slaves. It's an image deeply rooted in popular culture. Rows of exhausted men in chains, whips cracking through the desert air, cruel overseers shouting orders. It certainly makes for dramatic cinema. There's just one problem. Archaeology doesn't support it. In the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary near Giza. The cemetery of the pyramid workers. Think about that. Not hidden far away, not dumped anonymously into mass graves. Buried with care, close to the pyramids themselves. Some tombs even contained bread and beer for the afterlife. That doesn't fit the picture of disposable slave labor, not at all. Even more revealing. The skeletons tell stories. Broken arms that healed, fractured legs that had been carefully set, severe injuries survived for months or years afterward. Healing like that requires treatment. Food, rest, care. People don't spend valuable resources nursing workers back to health if they consider them worthless. These were skilled laborers, craftsmen, seasonal workers, professionals. Their lives were difficult, their work was dangerous. But that's not the same thing as slavery. History deserves that distinction. Myth number 2. The Egyptians had no idea what they were doing. This one appears in a slightly different form. People stare at the Great Pyramid and say, "Humans couldn't possibly build something that precise." Why not? Humans built spacecraft. Humans crossed oceans. Humans invented the internet. Humans somehow convinced millions of people that pineapple belongs on pizza. We're clearly capable of astonishing achievements. The pyramid wasn't built because Egyptians stumbled into success. It was built because generations refined knowledge. Construction techniques improved. Surveying methods evolved. Stoneworking became more sophisticated. Mistakes became lessons. Every civilization stands on the shoulders of those before it. Ancient Egypt was no different. Myth number 3. Aliens did it. Ah, yes, our extraterrestrial friends have arrived. Again, let's be fair. The idea isn't entirely new. For centuries, travelers looked at the pyramids and simply couldn't imagine how they were built. The scale is overwhelming. Even today, standing beneath the Great Pyramid makes you feel wonderfully small. So some people searched for extraordinary explanations. Visitors from another planet, advanced lost civilizations, secret technologies, mystical powers. Here's the difficulty. None of those theories require evidence. Archaeology does. And archaeology has uncovered villages, bread ovens, stone quarries, copper tools, ramps, worker graffiti, payroll records, rope fragments, human skeletons, medical care, administrative documents, thousands upon thousands of ordinary details that together explain how extraordinary things happened. The alien theory has one major weakness. It ignores the actual people who left their fingerprints all over history. Sometimes. The greatest mystery isn't how humans built the pyramids. It's why we're so reluctant to believe they could. One afternoon, while helping move supplies, you overhear two scribes laughing. One points toward markings inside a recently finished section of the pyramid. Not elegant hieroglyphs, not royal inscriptions, construction graffiti, work gang names. Crews gave themselves nicknames. Some were wonderfully confident, names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure. Imagine spending centuries imagining mysterious supernatural builders, only to discover the equivalent of construction workers writing their team nickname inside the building. It's strangely comforting. Ancient workers had exactly the same sense of humor modern workers do. Leave your mark. Confuse future generations. Now let's discuss another favorite. The famous curse of the pyramids. Hollywood loves this one. Open the tomb. Terrible things happen. Ancient spirits awaken. Everyone dies mysteriously. Reality? Much less dramatic. Most so-called curses became famous after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, not the Great Pyramid, and many stories were exaggerated by newspapers hungry for sensational headlines. Could entering sealed tombs expose explorers to mold spores or harmful bacteria? Possibly. Could coincidence explain some unfortunate deaths? Absolutely. Ancient magic. Evidence remains frustratingly absent. Good journalism, however, has always struggled to compete with spooky headlines. As the afternoon stretches on, you notice something. Every task has a logical explanation. Surveyors measure. Stonecutters shape. Haulers pull. Doctors heal. Bakers bake. Nothing depends on mystery. Everything depends on skill. The real secret of the pyramids isn't hidden inside secret chambers. It's hidden inside organization. Imagine trying to coordinate 20,000 people, feed them, house them, provide water, replace tools, treat injuries, maintain schedules, record supplies, plan construction years in advance. That's the miracle, not levitation, management. It's not as glamorous as magic. But honestly, it's far more impressive. Here's something fascinating. You're standing among the builders. Not one of them wonders whether invisible beings are secretly helping. They know who's building the pyramid. They know who quarried the limestone, who mixed the mortar, who sharpened the chisels, who repaired the sledges, who baked today's bread. No mystery. Just hard work. Sometimes, people living through history understand it better than people looking back at it. As you walk home, an older mason notices you staring thoughtfully at the pyramid. You've been thinking. You nod. People in the future, you say quietly. What if they forget us? He smiles. They will. Not exactly comforting. He continues. They'll remember the stones. You glance upward. They'll wonder how. The old mason laughs. They'll come up with stories. He isn't wrong. 4,500 years later, people are still arguing, still imagining, still searching for impossible answers. And all along, the truth has been waiting patiently beneath the sand. The wind grows softer. The stars begin appearing overhead. You stop one final time before entering the village. The Great Pyramid rises silently against the night sky. No glowing energy beams, no hidden flying machines, no supernatural forces, just millions of carefully placed stones, thousands of skilled workers, decades of planning, countless ordinary mornings, endless aching muscles, shared meals, laughter, friendships, mistakes corrected, knowledge passed from one generation to another. Somehow, that story feels even more magical than the myths, because it reminds us of something easy to forget. Human beings are capable of extraordinary things, not because we're perfect, but because we work together. The day is nearly over. The pyramid stands taller than it did yesterday. Tomorrow another layer will rise, another generation will learn, another story will be added to history. Now we will leave ancient Egypt behind and travel back to the present, where archaeologists uncover the forgotten village of the pyramid builders, piece together their lives from broken pottery, abandoned tools, and ancient bones, and finally give names, faces, and dignity back to the ordinary workers who changed the world forever. Because sometimes, the greatest discovery isn't a golden treasure. It's the people history forgot. You close your eyes. The sounds of the workers' village fade away. The laughter, the crackling fires, the smell of fresh bread, the scrape of sandals across packed earth, the endless rhythm of stone against stone. Slowly, everything becomes quiet. Very quiet. Time begins to move, not hours, not days, centuries. The pharaoh who ordered the Great Pyramid is gone. His sons are gone. The priests are gone. The scribes, the bakers, the doctors, the children chasing one another through the village streets. All gone. Empires rise. Empires collapse. Languages change. Religions spread. Trade routes shift. The mighty kingdom of Egypt slowly transforms into history. Meanwhile, the pyramid remains, patiently watching, silently waiting. Over the centuries, the workers' village slowly vanishes. Mud brick houses melt back into the earth. Wood rots away. Roofs collapse. Wind carries sand across abandoned streets. Goats no longer wander the alleys. The bakery fires grow cold. The physician's little clinic disappears beneath drifting dust. Eventually, nobody remembers exactly where the workers lived. Travelers continue visiting the pyramids. They admire the kings, measure the stones, sketch the monuments, but the ordinary builders, almost invisible. History has always had a habit of remembering those at the top, not always those holding everything up. Thousands of years pass. One morning, a different group of people arrives. They aren't carrying sledges, they carry notebooks, cameras, measuring tapes, brushes, tiny trowels. They're archaeologists. Their job isn't to build history, it's to recover it. At first glance, the desert looks empty, just sand, rock, scattered fragments. But archaeologists know something important. The ground remembers every broken pot, every animal bone, every discarded tool, every footprint preserved beneath layers of soil. History rarely disappears. It simply waits for patient people to ask the right questions. If you've ever imagined archaeology as people dramatically uncovering golden statues every afternoon, I'm afraid reality is wonderfully less exciting and much more careful. An archaeologist kneels beside a shallow trench with a brush no larger than your hand. She gently sweeps away centuries of dust, millimeter by millimeter. Someone else records the exact location of a pottery fragment. Another photographs the layer before anyone removes it. Everything matters, not just beautiful objects, a broken fish bone, a cracked beer jar, an old bread oven. These humble discoveries often reveal more about everyday life than treasure ever could. Gold tells us what kings owned. Broken dishes tell us how ordinary people lived. Then, one discovery changes everything. Near the Giza Plateau, archaeologists uncover rows of ancient buildings, bakeries, barracks, storage rooms, animal pens, workshops, exactly the kind of organized settlement you'd expect for thousands of skilled laborers. Suddenly, the old image of exhausted slaves living in misery begins falling apart. Because this isn't a slave camp. It's a functioning community. There are industrial-sized bakeries capable of feeding enormous work crews. There are sleeping quarters, administrative offices, evidence of organized food distribution. The pyramid builders weren't invisible anymore. Their homes had been found. Imagine discovering the backstage area after centuries of only seeing the stage. Perhaps the most moving discoveries aren't buildings. They're people. Archaeologists carefully excavate the workers' cemetery. The skeletons speak, not with words, with evidence. Strong arm bones, powerful shoulders, Worn joints, signs of years spent lifting heavy loads, broken ribs that healed, fractured legs carefully repaired, arthritis, muscle attachments enlarged through constant labor. Every skeleton becomes a biography. No names survive for most of them, but their bodies remember their work. One man lost several teeth. Another suffered a badly broken arm decades before his death. Yet both lived long enough for those injuries to heal. Someone cared for them, fed them, protected them while they recovered. That's community, not disposability. Now imagine being an archaeologist and trying to reconstruct someone's grocery list from 4,000-year-old garbage. Surprisingly, you can. Animal bones recovered from the workers' settlement revealed diets richer than many people expected. Cattle, sheep, goats, fish, bread, beer, onions, garlic. Dates, not luxury feasts every evening, but certainly enough to fuel physically demanding work. Scientists even estimate that thousands of pounds of meat may have been consumed regularly to feed the workforce. Apparently, building the greatest monument on Earth burns a few calories. Who knew? Then comes one of archaeology's favorite discoveries. Construction graffiti hidden inside parts of the pyramid, crew names, work teams, little messages, not intended for tourists, not meant to impress anyone, simply workers leaving their mark. One team proudly calls itself the Friends of Khufu. Imagine spending your entire career helping build the greatest structure on Earth, and deciding your crew name should sound like a neighborhood bowling league. It's wonderfully human. These aren't mysterious giants. They're ordinary workers with inside jokes, exactly like construction crews today. Some things survive every century. Humor is one of them. For generations, people underestimated ancient Egyptians. Some believed they lacked sophisticated engineering. Others imagined impossible technology. Still others insisted slaves alone made everything happen, piece by piece. Archaeology corrected those assumptions. The evidence painted a richer picture, a society capable of remarkable organization. Skilled craftsmen, experienced surveyors, professional administrators, doctors, bakers, laborers, families, children. Not anonymous masses, people, real people. History became more accurate, and somehow more inspiring. As the sun begins setting over modern Giza, you stand beside the excavation. The pyramid still towers above the landscape. Tourists gather nearby taking photographs. Children point excitedly toward the summit. Guides explain the history. Most visitors admire the monument. Few realize that beneath their feet, another equally important story waited thousands of years to be discovered. Not a king's treasure, not hidden gold, not secret chambers, a village. Because monuments tell us what civilizations built. Villages tell us who they were. Close your eyes once more. Imagine walking through those dusty streets again. You pass the bakery, warm bread fresh from the oven. The brewery, workers laughing together after another exhausting day. The doctor's house, where injured laborers receive care. Children racing between homes. Old craftsmen sharing stories beside evening fires. You know these people now, not by name but by their lives, and somehow that feels enough. The Great Pyramid has stood for more than 4,500 years. It has watched kingdoms rise and fall. It has survived earthquakes, sandstorms, wars, empires, curious travelers, Victorian adventurers with questionable ideas, and millions of tourists armed with cameras and sunscreen. But perhaps its greatest lesson isn't about the pharaoh who commissioned it. It's about the people who made it possible, the stone haulers whose names were forgotten, the surveyors who measured every angle beneath the stars, the bakers who woke before dawn, The physicians who healed broken bones, the rope makers, the carpenters, the quarrymen. The children who grew up watching the pyramid rise, one layer at a time. History often shines its brightest light on kings, yet civilizations are built by ordinary hands. Every stone in the Great Pyramid whispers the same quiet truth. Greatness is rarely the work of one extraordinary person. More often, it's the work of thousands of ordinary people who choose to show up day after day and do their part. So tonight, as you settle a little deeper beneath your blanket, think about those workers. They never imagined that people thousands of years in the future would still stand beneath the monument they built. They certainly never imagined millions of people watching videos about them on glowing screens while falling asleep. Life is wonderfully strange like that. If you enjoyed spending the day in ancient Egypt with me, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more historical journeys designed to help you relax, unwind, and drift off into another time. And before you fall asleep, let me know in the comments. If you could spend one day in ancient Egypt without bringing any modern technology, what job would you choose? Would you be a surveyor, a baker, a physician, a scribe, or would you wisely stay as far away from 2.5-ton limestone blocks as humanly possible? Thank you for spending this journey with me. Sleep well, dream deeply. The day's work is finally over, not just for you. For everyone, the Great Pyramid, which echoed all day with voices, now stands quietly beneath the evening sky. No ropes creak, no sledges scrape across the limestone, no foreman calls another command. For the first time since before sunrise, silence begins to settle over the plateau. Not complete silence. Ancient Egypt is never completely silent. Instead, the world simply grows. Softer, you leave the pyramid behind. Its enormous white limestone sides glow gently beneath the rising moon. Earlier today, the monument looked powerful. Now, it almost looks peaceful. Moonlight changes everything. The sharp edges become gentle. The bright limestone turns silver. Long shadows stretch quietly across the desert. For a moment, the pyramid no longer feels like something people are building. It feels like something that has always belonged here, as though the desert itself simply decided to become a mountain. Your sandals press softly into the cool earth as you walk toward the village. The heat of the day has disappeared. In its place, a gentle breeze drifts from the Nile. It carries familiar scents: fresh water, moist earth, palm trees, wood smoke, and somewhere nearby, fresh bread still cooling outside a bakery. The smell lingers in the air. Warm, comforting, simple. Ahead, small oil lamps begin appearing one by one, golden points of light scattered throughout the village. Some shine from open doorways, others flicker behind woven reed windows. A child laughs, only briefly, then disappears inside. A mother quietly calls everyone home. A wooden door closes gently. Somewhere nearby, a goat complains one last time before finally deciding sleep sounds like a better idea. Even the animals seem tired tonight. The communal bakery, so busy only hours ago, has almost finished its work. The great clay ovens still glow with fading embers. A baker brushes flour from her hands. Another stacks tomorrow's grain beside the grinding stones. Nothing is rushed. There is no need. Tomorrow will come soon enough. It always does. Nearby, the brewery grows quieter. Large ceramic jars stand neatly arranged against the wall. Only a handful of workers remain. They speak in low voices, no loud laughter anymore, just quiet conversation. One man stares into the fire, another slowly tears apart the last piece of bread from dinner. Nobody says very much. After a day spent shouting over ropes and stone, silence becomes surprisingly comfortable. You continue walking. Children who spent the evening chasing each other through dusty streets have disappeared indoors. Their games are over. Tiny sandals sit outside the doorway. A little wooden toy rests forgotten in the dust. Tomorrow morning someone will come running back for it, but tonight it waits quietly beneath the stars. You pass the physician's home. Earlier, patients sat outside waiting for treatment. Now, only a single oil lamp remains lit. The physician carefully rolls fresh linen bandages. He organizes jars filled with honey. Small bowls containing herbs rest neatly on wooden shelves. He pauses for a moment, looks toward the pyramid, then quietly blows out the lamp. Darkness gently fills the room. Even healers must sleep. The scribes, who spent the evening recording food supplies, attendants, tool repairs, and livestock, finally finish their work. One stretches his aching fingers. Another rolls a sheet of papyrus closed with great care. Ink dries slowly beneath the warm night air. The records are placed safely inside a wooden chest. Tomorrow, another page will begin. Another day carefully preserved. Even ordinary days deserve remembering, although none of them could possibly imagine that thousands of years later, people around the world would still be trying to understand their lives. You reach your small home. The mud brick walls still hold a little warmth from the afternoon sun. Inside, your woven reed mat waits exactly where you left it. Simple, thin, perfectly familiar. Somehow, it already looks more comfortable than the softest modern mattress. Not because it changed, because you did. Hard work has a remarkable way of improving sleep. No expensive mattress advertisement has ever discovered a better secret, although hauling limestone all day may be considered an extreme sleep aid. You sit quietly outside for just one more moment. The village has almost disappeared into darkness. Only scattered lamps remain. Their soft light flickers gently against mud brick walls. Above, the stars begin multiplying. One, then another, then dozens. Then hundreds. Soon, the entire sky glitters. Without electric lights, the heavens reveal themselves completely. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a pale river of light. Ancient Egyptians knew these stars well. Farmers watched them. Priests studied them. Surveyors trusted them. Travelers followed them. Children dreamed beneath them. And tonight, so do you. A cool breeze brushes gently across your face. Palm leaves rustle softly, somewhere beyond the village. The Nile continues its endless journey north. It makes no announcement, no grand speech. It simply flows, as it has for thousands of years, as it will for thousands more, long after the pyramid is complete, long after every worker has gone. The river will still remember the way. You glance one final time toward the Great Pyramid. The moon now hangs above its summit. Silver light spills gently across its smooth casing stones. It no longer looks like a construction project. It looks eternal, silent, patient, watching over the sleeping village, watching over history itself. You take one slow breath, then another. The air feels cooler now, calmer. Your shoulders finally begin to relax. The soreness remains, but somehow it feels farther away. The day's work is finished. Tomorrow will bring more stone, more ropes, more bread, more laughter, more sweat beneath the Egyptian sun. But not tonight. Tonight, the workers sleep. The pyramid rests, the village dreams, and the stars continue their silent journey across the endless Egyptian sky. Stay here for a while. There is nowhere else you need to be. No stones to lift, no ropes to pull. Only the cool desert night, the quiet village, and the peaceful certainty. That morning can wait. Sleep hasn't quite found you yet. Not completely. So instead of lying awake, you decide to walk, not far, just a little way beyond the village, away from the pyramid, away from the day's labor, toward the Nile, the same river that has quietly watched over Egypt for thousands of years. The path beneath your sandals is cool now, very different from the burning ground of the afternoon. Each step stirs a little dust. It settles almost immediately. Even the earth seems ready for sleep. Behind you, the workers' village has become a scattering of tiny amber lights. Most homes are already dark. A few oil lamps still flicker softly through open doorways. Someone coughs. A baby lets out one sleepy cry before settling again. A dog stretches lazily, circles 3 times, and lies back down. The village isn't awake. It simply hasn't quite finished falling asleep. Ahead, the Nile glimmers beneath the moon. Its surface moves so gently that the reflections seem almost unreal. The stars shimmer in the water. The moon stretches into a long ribbon of silver. Every few moments, a tiny fish breaks the surface. Ripples spread quietly across the river, then disappear. The Nile never truly rests. It simply keeps flowing, patiently, steadily, as it always has. You kneel beside the water. The cool air feels wonderful after another hot day. You dip your fingertips into the river. The water is surprisingly refreshing. It slips gently around your hand before continuing north toward the Mediterranean Sea. This very river watered the grain that became today's bread, filled the jars you drank from, fed the fish served at dinner, floated boats carrying limestone, supported every village, every temple, every field. Without the Nile, there is no Egypt. Without Egypt, there are no pyramids. It's astonishing how much history depends on one river. The reeds along the riverbank sway gently. Their leaves whisper against one another. Soft, steady, almost rhythmic, somewhere hidden among them. A frog begins calling. Another answers, then another. Soon, the riverbank has its own quiet nighttime chorus. Nothing loud, nothing demanding, just little voices reminding the world that life continues, even after sunset. A dragonfly skims low across the water. Its wings catch the moonlight for only a moment before it disappears into the darkness. High above, the stars seem even brighter away from the village. You lean back and simply look upward. There are so many, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. The Milky Way stretches from one horizon to the other, like a pale ribbon scattered across black velvet. No electric lights compete with it, no glowing billboards, no passing airplanes, no satellites sliding silently overhead. Just stars, exactly as the pyramid builders saw them, exactly as their grandparents saw them, exactly as their grandchildren would. Some things change very slowly. The night sky is one of them. You remember the old surveyor, the one who spent hours studying these stars. Somewhere beneath this very sky, he found true north using nothing more than careful observation and patience. No compass, no GPS, no glowing screen telling him where to stand. Only experience, generations of knowledge, and quiet confidence. It's humbling, Modern technology is extraordinary. But so is a patient human being willing to spend years learning one skill. A gentle breeze crosses the river. It carries the scent of damp earth, lotus flowers, fresh reeds, palm trees. Somewhere farther downstream, you catch the faint smell of someone's evening cooking fire. Perhaps they're baking tomorrow's bread. Perhaps they're preparing fish caught only hours ago. Perhaps they're simply enjoying one more peaceful evening beside the river, whatever the reason. The smoke drifts lazily upward before disappearing into the night. A fishing boat rests quietly against the bank. Its simple wooden hull rocks ever so slightly with the current. Inside, the nets have already been folded neatly. Tomorrow before sunrise, the fishermen will return, just as the bakers will bake. The quarrymen will quarry. The surveyors will measure. The physicians will heal. The rope makers will twist flax into sturdy cords. Life moves in gentle cycles here. The river rises. The river falls. Seeds are planted. Harvests arrive, stone by stone. The pyramid grows. Nothing happens quickly, yet somehow everything gets done. You continue walking. The moon climbs a little higher. Its light paints the landscape in silver and blue. The palm trees cast long shadows across the ground. Their leaves sway with slow elegance. Not hurried, not restless, just moving with the wind. You find yourself matching their pace, breathing a little slower, walking a little more gently. The day feels farther away now. The aching muscles, the heavy ropes, the scorching sun. They haven't disappeared, but they've softened, like memories already becoming stories. In the distance, the Great Pyramid appears once more. From here, it no longer dominates the landscape. Instead, it watches quietly from across the fields. Moonlight traces its smooth sides. The monument seems almost weightless. It's strange. You know it weighs millions of tons. Yet beneath the stars, it appears calm, effortless, as though it simply belongs beneath this sky. Perhaps that's why it has inspired people for so long, not because it challenges nature, but because it somehow feels part of it. You sit beneath a date palm. Its trunk is warm from the heat it stored during the day. Now it slowly releases that warmth back into the cool night. A few ripe dates hang above your head, somewhere nearby. An owl calls once, then falls silent. The sound echoes gently across the water before fading away. Everything seems content to speak only when necessary. The night has no interest in rushing. Time becomes difficult to measure. Minutes, or perhaps longer, slip quietly past. You stop thinking about tomorrow, about work, about history, about anything at all. You simply listen. The flowing river, the rustling reeds, the distant frogs, the whispering breeze, the occasional splash of a fish returning beneath the surface. It is a kind of music, one that has played here every night for thousands of years, long before the first pyramid. Long after the last pharaoh, the Nile keeps singing. Eventually, you stand, not because you must, but because home is waiting. The village sleeps peacefully now. Almost every lamp has gone out. Only the stars remain awake, and they seem perfectly happy keeping watch until morning. You take one last look at the river, then quietly begin the walk back. Slowly, comfortably, without hurry. There is nothing left to accomplish tonight. The stones can wait. History can wait. Morning can wait. For now. There is only the cool air, the silver river, the endless stars, and the quiet promise that sleep is growing closer with every gentle step. In our final chapter, you'll lie down beneath the ancient Egyptian sky one last time. The village will become completely still. The pyramid will rest beneath the stars. The Nile will continue its endless journey. And together, we'll let the ancient world gently drift away into silence. You've made it home. The village sleeps. The Nile continues its quiet journey through the darkness. And above it all, the Great Pyramid stands exactly where you left it, silent, patient, watching. You pause at your doorway for one last look. The moon hangs high above the plateau now. Its pale light spills gently across the smooth limestone casing. Hours ago, that stone reflected the fierce Egyptian sun. Now, it reflects only moonlight, soft, cool, gentle. The pyramid seems to breathe with the night. Not because it moves, but because everything around it has become so wonderfully still. You step inside your small home. The mud brick walls have cooled. The air feels comfortable now. Gone is the relentless heat that wrapped itself around every hour of the afternoon. Only a faint warmth remains, enough to remind you of the day, not enough to disturb the night. Your reed mat waits quietly in the corner, exactly where it has always been, simple, woven from reeds gathered along the Nile, nothing luxurious, nothing unnecessary, just enough. Sometimes, enough is exactly what we need. You lower yourself onto the mat, slowly. Your shoulders sigh with relief. Your legs finally stop carrying your weight. Your hands rest gently beside you. The blisters still sting a little. Your back still remembers every stone you helped move today. But now, there is nowhere to lift, nowhere to pull, nowhere to hurry. The work is finished. Outside, a breeze slips softly between the palm trees. Their leaves answer with a quiet rustle, not loud enough to interrupt your thoughts, only enough to accompany them. The sound rises, then fades, then rises again like breathing, steady, patient, unhurried. Somewhere beyond the village, the Nile flows. You cannot see it from here, but you know it is there. It flowed yesterday. It flows tonight. It will flow tomorrow. It asks for no praise. It makes no announcements. It simply continues. There is something comforting about that. Some things do not need to hurry. They simply keep moving, one gentle moment after another. You think about the workers. The baker who smiled as she handed you warm bread. The physician quietly wrapping an injured arm. The surveyor staring patiently at the stars. The quarryman listening to stone before striking it. The rope-maker twisting strand after strand of flax. The child pretending to be Pharaoh for an afternoon. The old mason who laughed when you asked whether people in the future would remember your names. Perhaps they won't, but they remembered your work. Sometimes, that is enough. The village grows even quieter. One last conversation ends somewhere outside. A wooden door closes softly. Footsteps fade. A dog sighs before settling into sleep. The final cooking fire becomes glowing embers. Its warmth slowly disappears into the cool desert air. The smoke rises higher, higher still, until it blends with the night itself. Above the village, the stars continue their endless journey. You remember how the surveyors watched them, night after night, year after year, patiently measuring, patiently learning, trusting the heavens to guide their hands. Those same stars now shine above you, exactly as they shone above them, exactly as they will shine above people yet to be born. The sky, asks for nothing. It simply remains. The pyramid catches your attention one last time. Even through the doorway, you can see its outline against the sky. So much effort, so many hands. So many ordinary mornings, bread baked before sunrise, ropes lifted, stone-shaped, measurements checked, laughter shared, injuries healed, children raised. Days repeated again and again and again, until one day, the impossible stood complete, not because of magic, not because of giants, not because of visitors from distant stars, because people kept showing up, quietly, faithfully, patiently. One day at a time, you close your eyes. The darkness behind your eyelids feels peaceful. You take a slow breath. The cool night air fills your lungs, then leaves again. Another slow breath. There is no rush. Morning is still far away. The foreman isn't calling your name. No stone waits to be lifted. No rope waits to be pulled. Even history itself seems content to rest for a little while. Imagine the entire plateau beneath the moon. The pyramid sleeping beneath silver light. The workers' village wrapped in silence. Palm trees swaying gently. The Nile gliding north without effort. The stars turning slowly overhead. Everything exactly where it belongs. Everything calm. Everything still. And now, imagine time itself becoming quiet. The centuries no longer rushing. The kingdoms no longer rising and falling. The voices of history fading into the wind. Only the desert remains. Only the river remains. Only the stars remain. And the Great Pyramid standing patiently beneath them all. Perhaps somewhere, in another age, another traveler stands where you stood today, looking upward, wondering how such a thing was possible. Perhaps they imagine kings. Perhaps they imagine mysteries. Perhaps they imagine impossible machines. You know the answer. The answer was always simpler. Bread shared among friends, hands pulling together. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next, people caring for one another. Ordinary lives, extraordinary patience. The breeze grows softer, the night grows deeper, your breathing becomes slower. The sounds outside drift farther away. The frogs along the Nile continue their gentle chorus. Then even they seem quieter. The owl has finished calling. The palm leaves barely move. The embers fade one by one. The moon begins its slow journey toward the western horizon. The stars continue their endless dance. Long before dawn, the world belongs only to silence. Tomorrow, the bakers will wake first, then the brewers, the physicians, the surveyors, the quarrymen, the rope makers, the children. And finally, the Great Pyramid will welcome another day of patient work. But none of that matters tonight. Tonight, the tools are resting. The stones are resting. The village is resting. Egypt is resting. And now, so are you. Sleep peacefully. Let the cool desert air carry away the weight of the day. Let the quiet river carry away every lingering thought. Let the stars keep watch until morning. And let the Great Pyramid shine. Built by thousands of ordinary hands, stand as a gentle reminder that the greatest things in history were often created one calm day, one careful stone, and one shared effort at a time. Good night. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as timeless as the stones of ancient Egypt.